You already know, car show going down June 7th. Get online right now, get your tickets right now, but for the hustlers.
I get down to my probation officer, my son in the car. I say, if I don't come out in a couple of hours.
I look at him like an uncle. Like, this situation has been completely devastating on so many.
Have you heard the whispers going around about the BMF saga these days? Evidence is starting to point to a wild chain of events that has folks talking. What if Meech had no idea Tammy was plotting to set up Cuffy and that Mexican guy, Warz Suarez, or whatever his name might be, but now that everyone sees she's an informant, sources say they're still working with her. She's apparently still in the mix for the show. She was even spotted on the BMF red carpet, and it sounds like this was arranged by one of Meech's closest allies, Demetrius Flenory, also known as Big Meech. My dad and Meech have reportedly been pals for over 3 decades. I've known Meech my whole life. They are saying he's like an uncle to me. And online buzz is growing after 50 Cent called Black Mafia family founder Big Meech a rat for hooking up with Rick Ross. Observers claim the drama is only heating up because Meech might be firing back, warning 50 to chill out or else. People close to Meech imply he's giving 50 a serious heads up. 50 apparently started posting a lot of stuff blasting Big Meech once it was revealed that Meech is teaming up with Rick Ross for a welcome home concert in Florida. Ricky Ross, seems ready for that event. He's telling his fans to grab their tickets for February 13th, and folks believe it's going to be huge. 50 can't stand Rick Ross, so that alone sounds like an issue. Sources close to 50 have hinted he's the kind of person who wants total loyalty from business partners, so he might have felt personally attacked by Meech doing deals with Ross. But Meech seems to be telling people that 50 is the one who looks like a snitch. They are saying he's asking why 50 is out here complaining when 50's also been involved with folks who raise eyebrows. Allegedly, the real informant is 50 Cent, because the only reason he's talking smack is that Meech did business with one of his biggest ops. It's like the pot calling the kettle out. I have it on good authority that this situation is pretty messy. Let me just tell you, the main thing to remember about 50 Cent is that when he picks an enemy, he doesn't really let it go. He's known for grudges, and Big Meech is apparently in his crosshairs now. 50 posted a picture online with the words "The Truth and Nothing But the Truth BMF, who is Tammy Cowens, and then hinted he's got some surprising documentary on the way. According to people familiar with 50's camp, the film might reveal secrets about Tammy Cowens and Big Meech that will blow some minds. And it's supposedly going to be full of unexpected facts. Now, let me tell you the key folks involved. There's Demetrius Flenory, Big Meech, founder of the Black Mafia family. The TV series BMF is based on his real story, with his role played by his son, Demetrius Flenory Jr. Then there's Terry Southwest T. Flenory, portrayed by Da Vinci, who joined Meech in building one of the most influential street families in American history. In the early 2000s, they ran BMF Entertainment. Officially, it was a promotional operation. In reality, evidence is starting to point to a hidden system for laundering money. And that's where 50 Cent steps in, because back in July 2019, he decided to produce a television series about all of this for Starz. His company, G-Unit Films, got involved, and he became an executive producer. But wait. Another person in this mess is Tammy Cowens, described by many as Big Meech's longtime pal and business associate. In 2014, she spoke about Meech as if he were her best friend. She's credited as co-producer of BMF, and she also co-produced a similar 2012 show titled BMF, The Rise and Fall of a Hip-Hop Drug Empire. Tammy teamed up with Meech in 2008, and they've worked hand in hand with her acting as his business partner. That's why 50's post about Tammy was such a big deal. He suggested that a documentary he's making might expose dark truths about Tammy and Big Meech. Then 50 upped the ante by posting a rat image that said, "I think I'm Big Meech," and wrote in the caption about Meech's biggest misstep being his fallout with Tammy Cowens. He implied that any docu-series might reveal disturbing stuff. people are now questioning what these facts are. Is there some hidden side to Meech's story? According to an expert close to the BMF production, 50 feels let down that Meech is hooking up with Rick Ross for a Florida homecoming concert. 50 cannot stand Rick Ross, so he used it as a chance to accuse Meech of being a rat himself. Rick Ross was once a correctional officer, so certain folks still believe he's got law enforcement ties. Word is, 50 and Ross have been feuding since forever, and 50 loves reminding everybody that Ross used to lock people up. He apparently feels Ross might be an informant. In a 2015 interview, 50 basically implied that Ross is a fake tough guy who used to police the very streets he raps about. And 50 never tires of using that correctional officer angle to call Ross out. Sources suggest 50 thinks it's ridiculous for Ross to keep acting like he's from the underworld, because 50 was actually out there selling that white stuff when he was young and knows exactly how real it gets. But if you jump to 2019, 50 went on Real 92.3 in Los Angeles and repeated how Ross is irrelevant to the culture, claiming there's nothing about Ross's career he respects. Ross fired back on his IG stories, calling 50 a hurt hoe and telling him to separate business from personal matters. Some people are saying Ross was basically telling 50 that if his feelings are hurt, he needs to get over it. The Biggest Boss bragged about stomping on 50 every chance he gets, and he insisted 50's got no real reason to be upset. Yet the big issue isn't just that Meech teamed up with Ross, but that this isn't the first time people have whispered about Meech possibly cutting deals with the feds. Reports from watchers of the BMF story claim Meech might have been a federal informant to reduce his sentence. He was under surveillance from the early 90s, but it was only in 2003 that the DEA and FBI joined forces for Operation Motor City Mafia. They began with arrests of smaller players in BMF, like Raphael Smuff Allison, Jabari Hayes, Dar Carlo Hoskins, and the brothers Omari McCree and Jeffrey Lear. Those guys either faced intense charges or wore wires for the feds. Everything chipped away at the BMF from inside. By 2005, Operation Motor City Mafia had busted the group wide open. The feds caught a ton of people, seized huge amounts of money, guns, and property, and brought down the BMF's leadership, including Meech and his brother Terry. Demetrius Flenory and Terry were in charge of a huge network spanning the late 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. They had hundreds of employees, hauled in hundreds of millions of dollars, and even set up a record label and magazine. But in 2006, they both got hit with a federal RICO case out of Georgia, the first time a record label and a criminal network were accused of being one and the same. This is according to an expert in legal matters, who also mentioned that Meech was thought of highly by many because he never snitched on his group. When he got caught, he got 30 years, just like Terry. The charges were tied to dealing 5 kilos or more of white powder, having over 500 grams with intention to distribute, conspiracy to launder money, and 2 more counts of dealing in over 5 kilos. Meech said he was innocent, but the authorities insisted the evidence was massive. He was found guilty in 2008 and got a 30-year prison sentence. Then in October 2024, rumors began swirling that Meech was released to a residential re-entry spot in Miami, scheduled for full release by August 17, 2025. A lot of fans and associates celebrated, but others questioned how he managed to get out so early. Several folks keep hinting he might have cut a deal, and many suspect his best friend Tammy Cowens helped make that happen. Another interesting point, Tammy apparently owns the rights to Meech's life story. He sold them to her. She has a track record of being an informant. In 2022, Tanya Welch, widely called BMF's First Lady, spoke with Vlad TV. She implied she found out about Meech selling his rights to Tammy, who was connected to the government. Tanya revealed that Tammy tried to smear her and sent her back to prison. According to sources, Tanya was furious, especially when people she trusted stood beside Tammy at the BMF show's red carpet premiere. Tanya said she was stunned when she was brought into her probation officer's office. The way she described it, authorities told her she threatened an informant, which could violate her parole and land her back in prison. But Tanya said she never did that. She insisted Tammy orchestrated that accusation so Tanya would get locked away. Tanya was upset that Tammy did none of the heavy lifting, yet Meech gave her all these privileges and even granted her his life story. She hinted that it was ironic how Tammy, known by many as a government informant since 2008, had enough power to make those allegations and cause havoc for Tanya. But it gets stranger. Even if Tammy pushed for Meech's freedom, a lot of observers are wondering if he also needed to deliver someone else to the feds as part of his arrangement. That's where St. Louis native Dion Gatling, also called Cuffy, comes in. Cuffy and Meech reportedly go way back. According to sources close to Cuffy, he was one of the first people to hand Meech $1 million in cash. Their families were so tight that Cuffy's daughter, Tamara, treated Meech like an uncle. Tamara later went public about her father getting set up, claiming Meech and Tammy were behind it. She said her father had known Meech for over 30 years, and she viewed Meech as family. So this turn of events was heartbreaking, especially when they discovered that Ms. Cowens, working closely with Meech, might have played a part in her dad's downfall. Tamara said there were phone calls that seemed to confirm Tammy was working as CS1 for the government. She tried alerting Meech, but he reportedly brushed it off as a big misunderstanding, telling them to call Tammy directly and sort it out. But Tamara's dad refused to do that, claiming he wouldn't walk into a trap. There are even recordings of Cuffy himself, describing in detail how Meech allegedly fed his info to Tammy. He explained that he and Tammy were working on a BMF script for a film. They had gotten that script together in 2009 or 2010, well before 50's BMF series on Stars. He seemed to believe it was a legitimate business plan. Then, out of nowhere, law enforcement swooped in to charge him. He insisted the initial target was a guy named Warz Suarez, some say a Mexican Sinaloa associate from California. He implied Tammy was aiming for Fidel, but folks insist Meech told Tammy about Cuffy's involvement as well. Whack 100, a personality people follow on social media, chimed in to claim that Meech got compromised even more by making deals with Tammy and letting her produce stuff about his life. Observers think Meech must have known she was an informant, yet he kept a relationship with her. Some are calling that dishonorable. Others argue Tammy holds the life rights, so Meech might have felt he had no choice if he wanted control of his own story. All in all, Meech isn't publicly addressing any of this, but folks close to the situation believe he's not backing away from Rick Ross just to keep 50 happy. Some insiders say Meech thinks 50 is acting contradictory, labeling Meech a rat, while 50's had a working relationship with Tammy for a long time. And people remember that Tammy got outed as an informant years ago. So 50 apparently knew all along. Critics keep asking, why is it fine for 50 to do business with Tammy, but Meech gets called a snitch for working with Ross? That's the big question floating around. And watchers have been writing comments like, 50 sure partnered with an informant. Guess that's not as interesting a headline, or 50 only had a problem once Meech hooked up with Ross. Actually, what do you think? Does this look like hypocrisy from 50 Cent, or did Meech break street rules by teaming up with someone rumored to be a police officer on the side? Let me just tell you, we'd love your thoughts on this. Post a comment below. If you enjoy this kind of story, show us by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Hang on for more updates. Remember, we're one big group here, so let your opinions fly in the comments. That feedback matters, and you can bet we're always watching it. Also, consider adding visuals, clips, screenshots, or any extra evidence you might have to keep the conversation alive. And if you're curious about what's next, well, we'll keep you on the edge of your seat with more to come. So let's go. Be sure to keep it locked here for more BMF breakdowns and entertainment news. You never know what's coming next.